All right, so excuse me. Basically, tonight's video is going to be breaking down. Um, it's technically the second part so far of this video series that I started with my last video, Faith, Hope, and Charity. Technically, it's still about faith, hope, and charity, but it's sort of like I don't want to say digression, but we're going to be covering another aspect of this that's um, not really, it's not really going to connect linearly to the end of the last video, but it will be a overall major point through all of this. So, um, and yes, I'll bring it all full circle eventually, depending on however many parts this video's series is going to be. So basically, we're going to do a 3-cycle G breath, and then we're going to get into the video. So forgive me, I'm trying a new setup. So yeah, hopefully it will work better than the other setup. So yeah, just, stay with me. I have, this, you'll see this, like, probably see these lines, this border here. It's just to kind of give me an idea of where the shot is and where I can write without it, going off, the shot. So, yeah, speaking of shots, we're going to get here and we're going to target this G here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a 3-cycle G breath, and then we're going to get into the video, which is going to be about the breath. So forgive me if I don't sound all that energetic and lively and all that. My spirit has been challenged here as of late, so just bear with me. So we're going to go ahead and get into the G breath, and we're going to do 3 cycles. So the command will be, as always, Lord Jesus Christ resonance. Now begin by exhaling all the air out of your lungs, out of your mouth. Remember, deep, full breaths, breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your mouth. Okay, so I'll give it a moment, let it stabilize. Let me stabilize. And I'm sorry if there's any shaky cam. All right. So basically what we're going to be getting into is the fact that the sacred G breath, right, is essentially understanding that this is the geometry of the brain waves and how they correlate and connect to one another, right? It is all based on the cross, right? The cross is going to be our guide, right? And this connects back to not only Lord Jesus Christ, right? But it also connects us to pretty much every ancient culture. Every ancient culture understood the properties, mathematics, and the powers of the cross. And what is inherent within the geometry of the cross, whether if it's in a circle or whether if it's in a square, is that it shows us about many different facets of our world and ourselves, right? It helps us to understand that many things in our world are broken up into these four aspects or these four qualities. Now, the main key to the cross is here in the center, which would be the number 5, right? The 5 would be the 5th power, which is the source, which generates these 4. So, for instance, in our world, we have 4 cardinal directions, right? We have south, west, north, and east, right? We have 4 seasons, right? We have 4 basic brain waves here, right? Ones that are just singular breath commands. We have 4 elements, etc., etc., etc. Many things in our universe can be categorized in these 4. For instance, the 4 states of matter. So you have solid, gas, liquid, and a plasma. You have the 4 energies of this world, which are matter, space, time, and energy, etc., etc. It goes on and on and on and on and on, right? But essentially what we're going to be breaking down is what the information that's contained within this geometry and within this information here. So basically, when it comes to understanding the breath, and I've explained this a little bit in previous videos, first we have to look to ourselves, right? We have to look to ourselves, look to the makeup of our body, which is in the image of God, right? As well as understanding that our bodies are made intelligently, that there is intelligent design behind the body, right? And within the body, right? It is our bodies are the temple of God, right? And as I mentioned before, the word spirit comes from the Latin spiritus and also spirare, which means to breathe, right? It's the act of breathing, or the breath in general. And of course, because the air that we are breathing, therefore the air that would be considered our breath, is we are getting from the external, right? That means that the spirit is the air, right? The spirit is our breath and our connection with that, right? The whole respiratory sequence is this exchange that we make with vegetation. And therefore, the breath is sort of like a bridge, right? The breath is this link between us and our external world, because it is this thing that's constantly bridging between our own bodies and the external world itself. Now, when it comes to understanding the breath, we realize that there are two main ways that we can breathe, right? And that is in and out of our mouth and in and out of our nose. You can consider these dualities, if you will. In fact, the yogis actually had a concept for understanding the various channels within the human body. So there are three main channels that run through the body, meridians, you can call them, right? They are essentially pathways, and that is the Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. So the Ida and Pingala are the nostrils, which constitute the nose, and the Sushumna is the mouth, right? So the Ida and Pingala are like dualities, right? They have solar and lunar, masculine and feminine energies, and they coordinate to both sides of our body, right? They one nostril covers the energy channels on one half of the body and the other nostril the other, right? You can consider this your yin yang, if you will. Whereas the Sushumna is a central channel, right? That sort of bridges the two and unifies them together in the body, right? So if you look at the way that the nose and the mouth are situated upon the face, you'll realize that the nose is above the mouth, right? And the mouth is lower than the nose. The Sushumna was the central channel that unified the energy within our body, whereas the Ida and Pingala sort of split them up into two, whereas that would essentially allow us to understand the different facets of the energy within our body. So the mouth represents earth, right? It is below, it is beneath, whereas the nose would represent heaven, right? And that would be our internal, that would be our mind, right? So the theta, or the nostrils, or the nose, governs the mind, whereas beta, or the mouth, coordinates the energy within our body, right? Now, if you understand the respiratory sequence in general, so just like one singular breath, if you consider the fact that, yes, there are two different, there are three different channels, of course, the Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, both your nostrils and your mouth, but both your nostrils are essentially one, which is your nose, broken up into two different separate channels, right? But it is one system, right? It is one unified system. But considering that the breath in and of itself is a double process of breathing in and then breathing out, you'll realize that there are four different types of combinations that you can make of that sequence of in and out, right? So that's where we bring in alpha and delta. If you consider the whole in and out process, you have four different ways that you can breathe, right? Well, there are four other, but we're only going to be talking about the four basic for today. And that would be in your mouth, out your mouth, in your mouth, out your nose, in your nose, out your nose, and in your nose, out your mouth, right? So these two, alpha and delta, are essentially equatorial breaths, whereas beta and theta are extreme opposites, heaven and earth, if you will, masculine, feminine, or summer and winter, right? So beta and theta are like considered winter and summer, right? Whereas alpha and delta are sort of your equinoctial or equatorial breaths, meaning that they act as bridges that take you from one extreme to the next, right? So when you breathe mouth nose, it's bringing from your body into your mind, whereas nose mouth is bringing you out of your mind back into your body, right? So if you pay attention to the way that the breath is passing in and out of your body, you'll notice that when you breathe just in and out of your mouth, what you'll notice is that the breath just goes straight down into like your gut. It feels like it's expanding your lower part of your lungs and your stomach. right? So you can feel it most strongly in there. Whereas when you breathe in and out of your nose, you feel it more in your upper chest, right? Around your thymus, right? And so essentially, the beta or the sushumna is in charge of your quantity of breath. It's in charge of your tank, if you will, the capacity to which you can breathe, right? So, how much you can breathe in and how much you can breathe out. In order to increase the capacity of your breath, you really have to work on those mouth breaths, right? Whereas the theta has more to do with the filter, right? So that's your that's your quality of breath, right? So if you want to, if you have poor quality in your breath, you want to clean out your filters, right? Which is all situated in the upper part of the body. So, in your nose, in your upper part of your skull, going down into your upper part of your chest, right? And again, the nostrils are broken up into two distinct dualities, right? Sometimes one nostril can be blocked and the other one can be open, or vice versa. So just to take that into consideration, right? And so when you breathe mouth nose for alpha, for instance, what it's doing is it's bringing the air straight down into your tank, right? Your lower part of your lungs. And then it's bringing the air, right? The spirit up back through the body upwards, right? And going downwards through the Ida and the Pingala, right? So what it's doing is it's taking the energy from your body, right, and it's filtering it, right? So it's filtering the energy that's in your body, right? Whereas nose mouth is basically bringing it down through the filter, and then basically then blowing it down into your lower part of your body. So what you're essentially doing is you're bringing the energy that's in your mind and bringing it into your body. So when you want to filter the energy that's in your body, you want to do alpha, right? But whenever you want to basically take that spirit or that breath and then bring it down into your body, you want to do delta. So this is sort of like an upload, whereas this is sort of like a download, right? This basically activates the energy in the body. This then brings it up into your mind through this process. And then once it's in your mind, then it sort of diagnoses or basically analyzes the energy that's in the body, right? That's passing through, because the body is the unified system, right? So it's basically doing a diagnostic scan of your whole system, right? And then it's bringing the energy back into the body for expression, if you will, or utilization. And then when you do the beta again, it anchors it into the body, right? So this whole process of the G breath is essentially drawing up energy and then like essentially discharging it and then recycling and reusing that energy, right? So this is why all of this is based upon memory, right? So the quality of your energy is going to be based upon your essentially your level of consciousness, right? Because you have your unconscious state, right? And then you have semi-conscious, right? Then you have consciousness, and then you have subconscious, and then you have superconscious, right? Which is essentially the mirror side of unconsciousness, right? Because it is the all or nothing, if you will, right? So what you want to do is you want to do the G breath in order to generate the current memory that your body is ultimately trying to process, right? The body is the body and the mind are essentially trying to what's the word? It's trying to update itself, right? It's trying to maximize the flow of energy that's going through the body. It's trying to process out old stuff that's ultimately causing the body to hurt itself and decay. Whereas when you do the G breath, what it's doing is it's drawing up those memories in order to discharge the energy that's in it. So that way you can let it go and recycle the energy to essentially make better choices. So what you want to do is you want to utilize the energy that's in your body, right? That's your current level, right? That's your unconscious, right? And you want to make it super conscious. So what you do is you have to draw it up into your conscious mind and then discharge it and understand the memory that's encoded within that experience or whatever it may be, that chemical, that emotion, whatever. And then you want to essentially discharge it by gaining a higher awareness of it. So you want to you want to inform yourself, right? And the way that you do that is through theta, right? You have to sort of understand like the information that's encoded within that memory, right? And depending on your level of the clarity of your theta will basically give you a response or give you a realization, which then can be basically brought back into the body, right? So all of this is encoded within the cross, right? It's encoded within essentially quadrants, right? The brain, if you will, like in the brain waves and what it's utilizing is essentially this is the way that our brains work. It's constantly going through these different brainwave states, right? And understanding the connection between beta, alpha, theta, delta, and then a second beta to complete the circuit is essentially what you're doing is your brain, right, is already utilizing gamma brainwaves, right? Which the gamma brainwave is produced whenever you complete a circuit of this cycle, right? It doesn't matter whether you start on delta, come all the way around and end on delta, right? And it doesn't matter if you start on beta and you come around and end on beta. The point is to make full circuits of this energy wheel, right? And you want to, wherever you start, you want to come back around and do a second one of that. So any of these you can start on as long as you come back around and end on it. Just remember that you have to go in this natural connective cycle. You can, if you want, you can experiment around with doing different directions and stuff, but just understand that this is a natural circuit, so that if you go in and you start, going theta, alpha, delta, alpha, theta, if you start doing stuff like that, just be aware that it's not as subtle as you think. Just be careful, because it's a very powerful technique. It's a very powerful meditation. So just remember that there's this order to it, right? Now, when it comes to the zeta breath, for instance, the zeta breath, opposite to the G breath that we just did would be beta, delta, theta, alpha, beta, right? And so the Z breath is the opposite of the G breath, which is essentially the red or body chakra, as opposed to the G, which is the purple, that's your brain, right? So you have your root chakra, which is this counterclockwise circle, and then you have your brain chakra, which is this clockwise circle, right? Now, it doesn't really matter where you start. It's the direction that you're going that determines what instruction you are giving your brain, right? So when you go starting on any one of these, as long as you're going clockwise, it's giving instructions to the brain to generate a gamma brain wave. If you go counterclockwise, you're giving your brain instructions to produce a zeta wave. Both of them have different qualities. One, the gamma increases, the zeta decreases. The the gamma breath lifts your consciousness up into the higher chakras, whereas the zeta brainwave grounds the energy back down into your body. There are many different methods and purposes as to what we use the breath for. But just remember that each one of these different breaths, whether you're breathing nose or mouth nose or whatever, each one of these breaths that you're constantly doing is essentially encoding the body and the process of epigenetics. Epigenetics is essentially DNA that's based upon consciousness. Essentially, whatever choices that we are making and whatever actions we are committing and whatever we are putting on top of our genetic code, we are constantly coding our genetics by whatever code we are putting on top of it. Food, for instance, has a genetic structure to it. It has information in the food, and whatever you're eating is being stacked on top of your genetic code, and it's giving your body instructions as to how to build itself, etc., etc. Every single item of food or chemical is constantly instructing the body and also constructing it. So yes, all of this is encoded within the cross, right? So just remember that whenever you are breathing in this way, what you're essentially doing is you're giving the body and the brain instructions to produce a gamma wave, right? And whenever you do produce a gamma wave, which there are many other natural and unnatural ways that you can manipulate and make your brain produce gamma brain waves. But the most natural way is through the G breath. So anytime that your brain starts producing gamma brain waves, it's essentially pure energy, right? And what you want to do is you want to work through this G breath over and over and over again. Do it multiple times throughout the day, all the time, right? In order to tap into how energy is being encoded in your body, because there are many things that can be found through this pattern, right? There are many different things that can be deciphered through this sequence of beta, alpha, theta, delta, beta, or beta has to do with your nutrition or your chemistry. Alpha has to do with your emotional patterns. Theta has to do with your information, and delta is expression / observation, right? You can consider this one your spiritual one. So understanding that there is this connection between them, and that they move from one to the next, right? And they all interweave into each other, right? And that whenever you understand that there is this blueprint, that there is this structure, there's this geometry, then you can do it consciously. And when you do it consciously, you're essentially basically hacking the brain, if you will. Or you know what I'm saying? You're tapping into the body's natural intelligence, and you're doing something consciously, whereas before in your life, it's always happened to you unconsciously, right? So the goal is to become more conscious of your body's processes and the codes and the mathematics that go into that. And again, this is all encoded within the cross. All of this is encoded within Lord Jesus Christ. And that's kind of like what I want to, go over today, is like the various different ways that this thing is being encoded through gematria, right? And that there is this intelligent system built within the very structure of it. So so let me and yes, I apologize, I've been dealing with some particular energy every single day. There's always some different form of energy, but just remember that, for the most part, it's telepathic. So essentially what I want to talk about is, again, as I've mentioned before, all right, we'll get into the basics first. So first I want to talk about, let's break it down into a real simple understanding. So we have mouth, right? We have mouth, which, and oh yeah, I'm sorry. And again, if you are new to this and you don't know, all of this is going to be based on septenary gematria. Thank you, Marty Leeds, brother. You're amazing. And everything that we decode, essentially, whenever I put numbers to letters, it's based upon this cipher. So just so you're aware, okay? Take a screenshot of that or draw it out yourself, because it will come in handy, as I've said before. So just making sure that it's coming in clear. Okay, so we have mouth, right? So mouth would be 1, 2, 6, 7, 6, right? 1, 2, 6, 7, 6 sums to 22, okay? And nose would be NOSE, which is 1, 2, 6, 5. This sums 14, okay? So we have these two numbers here, 22 and 14. Why is this important here? Well, again, just like I mentioned before, the mouth and the nose are broken up into two. These are two main different ways to breathe. But again, like I mentioned, the nose is broken up into two dualities. So ultimately, there is a trinity to your breath, right? There is this threefold aspect, right? As well as being a twofold aspect. Now, going back to squaring the circle. So you remember whenever I talked about Marty Leeds' work regarding squaring the circle? I mean, I could, forgive this circle, but just imagine that this is a circle. Okay, so whenever you square the circle, right, and then you make the radius of the circle, right, and then when you connect the sides of the square to that radius, right, you get the axiomatic triangle that is produced within squaring the circle. Again, forgive my drawing, it's really horrible, but I'm not really trying all that much right now. But you get the idea, right? This is the triangle that is found within squaring the circle. This axiomatic triangle is what the Great Pyramid of Giza is based off of, right? Now, the proportions of the Great Pyramid, right, are 711, right? This is where this comes from, right? 711. For instance, the degrees of the angle of this capstone is 76 degrees, and 711 is a gas station. There's another brand of gas stations called 76, and there's another brand of gas stations called Citgo, whose logo is a tetrahedron, right? So this is the rounded down proportions of the Great Pyramid. And so what also applies is 1422, right? 1422, okay? So the mouth and the nose, again, remember the nose is broken up into two sections, is a trinity. And what do we find here in this axiomatic triangle of bridging heaven and earth by squaring the circle? Well, we find 7 and 11, which is the same as 1422. So again, the gematria for the mouth and the gematria for the nose is essentially encoding the proportions of the Great Pyramid, right? Now, what's interesting about this, right, is, hang on, give me just 1 second. Eventually, I'll have a way better setup, but for right now, I'm just going to have to tolerate me. Okay, I think that's going to be a little bit better. Okay, sorry. All right, so what's interesting, going back to this thing here, right? The cross within the wheel, right? So if pi is a circle's circumference to its diameter, right? So if the diameter is 1, that would make the circumference pi, right? Now tau, like I've mentioned before, is a circle's circumference to its radius, right? So if the radius is 1, then the circumference would be double pi, right? So that would be 6.28. However, if we were to essentially double the diameter, right, instead of halve the diameter, right, we're going to double the diameter. And the way we do that is, again, making this cross here, right? Now, if just doing the radius or halving the diameter, right, cutting it in half, gave us double pi, because then the circle is like twice as big. Now the circle's half as big as pi, which would give us the ratio of 1.57, right? 1.57. That's half of pi, essentially, right? Give me just a moment. I'm sorry, give me just 1 moment. I'm looking for something in my notes. I really need to organize my notes as opposed to just like slamming them all in one singular note, like back to back. I try to add spaces, but you know how it can be whenever you start a new craft and you're just horrible at it in the beginning. I'm sorry, give me just a few more moments. Okay, yeah, so that's essentially what the cross is encoding, right? And what's interesting about this, right, is if mouth summed 22, right, and nose sums 14, well, if we divide 22 by 14, we get this ratio, right? So encoded within the words mouth and nose is giving us half pi, right? Whatever ratio that may be called. I don't even know what that would be called. I've looked online and I've heard that it's called eta, but I'm not sure if that was like true or not. But yeah, encoded within the words for mouth and nose, if we divide mouth by nose, we get 1.57, and a circle's circumference to the cross is 1.57. So again, remember how I was mentioning that there's this quadrant aspect for breathing, right? So you have mouth, 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 nose, 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 and nose, mouth, right? That is encoded within the very structure of the way that we breathe and the fact that we have a mouth and a nose. And encoded within the English words for mouth and nose is the same exact ratio that's encoded within a circle's circumference to the cross. Now, another interesting thing is that, okay, so mouth equals 22, right? Well, so does the word 7, right?
And as we know, 22 divided by 7 is pi. All right, so there's one of the lines for that cross, right? But what's interesting about this is that if you look at the glyph for 7, right? Or, yeah, the hieroglyph, the symbol for 7, what does it look like? It looks like the direction. Hang on, let me just draw this as a traditional 7. Sorry, that's just how I've always drawn 7s. What the 7 looks like is it looks like the circuit of air going into your mouth and down into your body, right? So the air goes into your mouth and then down into your body. And that's encoded within the gematria value for mouth, right? Just like how 7 sums 22. And again, 7 or 22 divided by 7 is giving us pi, right? So 22 not only equals mouth, but it also equals 7. And 14 not only equals nose, but it also equals 6, right? So going back to the axiomatic triangle within squaring the circle, we got, the Great Pyramid, right? Is 7-11, etc. Well, like I said, the capstone angle is 76 degrees, right? 76. And here within 22 and 14, we get 7 and 6, right? So, hang on, give me just one moment. So, yeah, 7 and 6. Now, what's interesting about this, right? Yeah, that's a pretty oddity. That's a pretty curious oddity that, it makes 7 and 6, 22 and 14, and, that being the that 22 and 14 encoding the circle's circumference to the cross, and the cross being a reference to the breath, and the fact that there's this trinity to your breath because you have 2 nostrils and 1 mouth, and then there's the triangle that's in squaring the circle, and that being 14 by 22, or 1422, right? But see, here's the weird thing. So if you look at the gematria for the word 14, right? So we're looking at the gematria for the word 14, which is 6, 2, 6, 5, 7, 5, 5, 1, right? This sums 37, right? So 14 equals 37. 22, can you see this? Okay, just double checking. 22 is 7, 4, 5, 1, 7, 2, 7, 4, 2. 20 sums 26, and 2 sums 13, right? And 26 plus 13 is 39. And if you add 37 plus 39, sums 76. Again, another reference to this number 76. Now, why 76? Well, if you've watched some of my previous videos, or you're well versed in the studies of Marty Leeds, you know exactly why 76. But in terms of how this relates to the breath, what is this 7 and this 6? Because you have 6 chakras, right? You have 6 chakras that are ultimately unified with the 7, which is also the center point, right? This is a cubic aspect. This is 6 days of creation, God resting on that 7th, God resting on that Sabbath in the center of all things, right? God is in the center of all things. That would be your omega, right? That's 7th, right? Give me just a moment. I'm looking for something. Yeah, so you have your 6 colors, right? And all of them are basically of pure white light, right? So you have your your 6 sides of the cube, right? Your 6 aspects of the cube. Here, let me go over this real quick. So there are 6 days of creation. God rested on the 7th, right? 6 colors of the rainbow made up of that 7th pure white light. 6 pieces of the armor of God, all being worn by you, the 7th, right? 6 directions of 3D space, all basically resting on a central 7th axis point in the center. And those 6 directions are essentially the 6 sides of the cube, all resting on that central 7th axis point. And then you have 6 chakras along the spine, right, that are resonant with the 6 colors of the rainbow, 6 sides of the cube, 6 pieces of the armor of God. And you have 6 brain waves broken up into 2. I'll draw these as little diamonds up here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 in the center. And then you have the zeta, right? So you have the 2 fusion breaths, right? Gamma and zeta. And then you have beta, alpha, theta, delta. So you have the 4 basics, right? The 4 essentially singular breaths that you can do. You have mouth, 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 nose, 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 and nose, mouth. And then the 2 circuits. Again, it doesn't matter where you start on the circuit. It's the direction in which you're going that constitutes a gamma brainwave. Whenever you go from beta to alpha, and then from alpha to theta, and then from theta to delta, and then delta back again, or you can start on delta and go. Whenever you're going in that clockwise direction, you are producing a gamma brainwave. Whenever you're going in the counterclockwise direction with these same breaths, you are producing a zeta brainwave. So you have these 2 fusion breaths, and then made up of these 4 individual central breaths, right? So again, this is 4 and 2, 4 and 2, going back to the rainbow, 42 degrees at its apex, right? So yeah, just wanted to bring that up as well. So, all right, where do I go from here? Right. Okay, so you have 2 nostrils, right? 2 nostrils and 1 mouth. Right? 2 nostrils and 1 mouth. So we have 2 and 1. 2 and 1, right? Well, the gematria for 2, 742, like we mentioned, right? The sum's 13, and 1, O-N-E, is 2, 1, 5. The sum's 8. So both of these together sum 21. 2 and 1, the gematria of them are 13 and 18, and they sum 21, right? So one interesting thing to note here, right? So if you have 1 sums 8, 2 sums 13, and together they sum 21, those are all Fibonacci numbers. Those are all Fibonacci numbers, right? So 8 is the 6th Fibonacci number, 13 is the 7th, and 21 is the 8th, right? If you add these up, 8 plus 13 plus 21, right, you get 42. Again, going back to the rainbow, right? This is encoded within your breath here, remember? With the fact that you have 2 nostrils and 1 mouth, encoding 13 and 8, both being Fibonacci numbers. Together they sum 21, right? And if you add 6 plus 7 plus 8, it's 21. Again, right? But 2 and 1, right? If you have 2 nostrils and 1 mouth, right? That would be 3, again, because there's this trinity to your breath, right? 2 nostrils and 1 mouth, right? So 2 and 1 together make 3, right? 3. And 3 times 21, because remember 2, 1 sum 21, right? But altogether 2 and 1 make 3, so 3 times 21 is 63. Well, why is 63 important? Well, first off, Ida Pingala Sushumna, like the English translations, Ida Pingala Sushumna, right? Sums 63, right? But also the phrase doubling the cube, right? And what is all of these 6 chakras based off of? It's based upon the doubling of the cube, right? Kabbalah, right? And if you double that, because this sums, doubling the cube sums 63. If you double that, you get 126, right? 126. And to double the cube, you just got to put a decimal right there. And then the ratio of 1.26, which is the same number,
right, to a different magnitude, right, because all you're doing is just adding zeros or taking them away and moving the decimal. It's the same root number or sequence of numbers, right? 1, 2, 6, right? And what's interesting about this is within the words 2, 1, right? 2, 1, there are 2 words and 6 letters, right? 2 words, 6 letters. Well, why is 2 and 6 important? Well, your Kabbalah is made up of 2 sets of 6, right? So if you have your 6 central, right? And then you have your 6 auxiliary or your 6 external, right? Your Kabbalah is made up of 2 sets of 6, right? Again, 2 and 1, going back to your breath, going back to your mouth and your nostrils, is encoding 2 and 6. 2 sets of 6. But also because if you consider all the different aspects of the cube, right? So you have 6 faces, right? 6 faces, we'll just put this. 8 vertices or corners, right? And then 12 edges or lines, right? All of these together sum 26. So 26 aspects to the cube, right? Or 26 parts of the cube, right? Geometrically speaking. 2 words, 6 letters, right? So there are 6 letters, and it sums 21, right? 2, 1 sums 21 times 6. 21 times 6 is 126. Because there are 6 letters, and 2, 1 sums 21. 21 is if you add 1 through 6, right? So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 sums 21. And look at 126 backwards, it's 621. And 21 times 6 is 126. All of this, the doubling of the cube, the rainbow, Kabbalah, all encoded within the fact that you have 2 nostrils and 1 mouth. So let's look at the sequence, right? The sequence. So let's look at the gematria for, okay, so mouth, right? Remember, mouth sums 22, right? So mouth would be just 22 times 2, right? That would be 44, right? 44. Nose, like I mentioned before, sorry if it's kind of going out of focus. Nose sums 14, right? So nose would be 14 times 2, which is 28, all right? If we add these together, right, 44 plus 28 for mouth, and nose, the 2 opposites, right, the 2 polarities, it sums 72, right, 72. And as you all know, Lord Jesus Christ sums 72, right? 72 is 6 times 12, right? 72 is also the root number for 720, which the degrees of that are the degrees of the hexagon, right? As well as the net for the tetrahedron, right? So, and I'll probably mention that a little bit later on, because I already talked about Zelda, I might as well mention that. But we're just going to keep going with this right now. So 44 and 28 together make 72, right? But let's also look at mouth, nose, and nose, mouth. Considering that it's the same thing, just, you know, the words are swapped, we're just going to add 22 and 14, which would be 36, right? And since there's mouth, nose, and nose, mouth, let's just multiply it by 2, and that's, again, 72. So mouth, and nose together sum 72. And mouth, nose, and nose, mouth together sum 72. Remember how I was talking about in the law of time how the words solar seals sum 72? Or sorry, 36, remember? And lunar tones sums 36. Again, 36 and 36 bringing together to make 72. All right. And if we were to apply the rule of Kalel to this, so the digits 0 to 72 is basically a system of 73, right? Going back to 73. And I'm not going to talk too much about 73, but I'm essentially working on this decode that's all based upon 73 and 37. But I just want to show y'all something real quick. So something that I thought was pretty interesting that I had
basically deciphered a little while ago. So whenever I was talking about the law of time, for instance, and the 4 alchemical colors, that we essentially encoded within our English words for rubedo, albedo, negredo, and citrinitas. And what we did was we encoded them in red, white, blue, and yellow, right? So red, white, blue, yellow. If we do the gematria for this, red sums 14, white sums 27, blue sums 15, and yellow sums 17. Well, if we add these up, it sums 73, right? I had mentioned that before. But what's interesting is that these 4 alchemical colors, right, were essentially what the Native Americans essentially encoded with the 4 cardinal directions, right? So anything that had a system of the cross or the cardinal directions, etc., the seasons, any sort of set of 4 energies that worked in tandem with each other, the Native Americans essentially used those colors. It was either red, white, blue, and yellow, or red, white, black, and yellow, right? But blue and black were often synonymous with each other. And again, in the alchemical tradition, the bluing, if you will, was negredo, the blackening, right? But what's interesting is that beta, right? If we do the gematria for beta, it sums 15. Alpha sums 13. Theta, sums 26, and delta sums 19. If we add these up, sums 73. So not only do the 4 alchemical colors, right, that's embedded within the law of time, embedded in the Mayan calendrical systems, embedded within Western alchemy, right, the ancient mystery school tradition of alchemy, as well as the 4 brainwaves. So again, there's another connection to the cross, and that being encoded within our breath, right? Again, this 73 is a system of 0 to 72, which is encoded in Lord Jesus Christ, right? It's encoded within the pentagram. It's encoded within the law of time, giving us our 365. If we multiply 73 by 5, because there are 5 colors in the 5 of each color in the vigesimal system. And again, if you lay out the integers from 1 to 73, 37 is in the center, right? Well, we're going to go ahead and move on here. Mouth sums 44. Mouth nose is 36. Nose is 28, and nose mouth is 36. If we add 44 plus 36 plus 28 plus 36, it sums 144. And I don't really need to tell y'all much about this one, because if you've read Revelation, you'll see this number repeated again and again. It's mentioned as 144,000, which is the length of days in a Baktun, right, in the Mayan cycle. But it also mentions this number in cubits, right? So Revelation 21:17 says, and he measured the wall thereof, right? So the wall would be one side of the cube, right? The city of God. 114 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is, of the angel, right? And the angel, as you know, is the angle. And what 2 first angles do we get? We get the triangle and the square, right? The triangle being the trinity of the breath, and the square being this cross here of mouth, 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 nose, 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 mouth, encoded within 144. But there are 2 basic ways to do the breath, right? So you go mouth, mouth, right? All the way back around to mouth, mouth, right? And there's also nose, nose, and you go all the way back around to nose, nose. These are the 2 primary ways to do the breath, right? One basically starts and ends in the mind, and the other one starts and ends in the body, right? Like I said before, you can do the equatorial ones, but these are the 2 primary ways that you can do the breath, right? Either starting on your mouth and ending on your mouth, or starting on your nose and ending on your nose, right? So if we do the gematria for mouth, 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 nose, 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 mouth, 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 it sums 188. And if we look at nose, 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 mouth, 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 nose, and nose, nose, right, it sums 172, All right. What's interesting about this, first off, is 188 plus 172 is 360, right? And as y'all know, the 360 degrees is the circle as well as the square. Again, going back to the cross, going back to this circuit, right? This breath circuit, this breathing circuit. And it's all encoded, encapsulated within the very words themselves. Now, if we look at the digits for 172 all the way to 188, right? If we look at if we lay out all the integers from the number 172 all the way to 188, do you know what the very center digit is? Is 180. Because you have 180 minus 8 on this side and 180 plus 8 on this side. And you want to know what's interesting about this? Is that there's a difference of 16 here. Well, if you include, the starting number, right? So if you minus 172 from 188, right? It's some 16, right? But because if you include 172 itself, you actually have 17 digits. But either way, 16 and 17 is a reference to the zodiac, right? Because the zodiacal belt is 6 degrees above the ecliptic and 8 degrees above the ecliptic and 8 degrees below. So the zodiacal belt is the 16-degree belt, right? And what is the zodiac doing in the sky? It's making pi, right? And it's making a 12, starred cross, but it's making pi 6 times, right? 6 times, right? So, yeah, it has 16 between them, right? Or the difference between 188 and 172 is 16, separated by this 180, right? This 180, right? Which is not only a line, but it's also a triangle. Again, the very center digit being 180, encoding the triangle in between these two, right? And because 180 is the center digit, then the law of averages will show that if we add all the digits between 172 all the way to 188, it sums 3,060, right? 3,060. Again, very closely related to 360. Not exactly, but there is a connection between 3,060 and 360, right? If we divide 3,060 by the number of digits, so there are 7, remember, like I said, there are 17 digits here, right? If we include 172, not just the difference between the two, but starting with 172 as 1 and then so forth, there are 17 digits, right? This 180 being the 9th, and as I've mentioned before, 9 is the centiger of 17, right? So if we divide 3,060 by 17, it'll sum that centiger, right? So it sums 180, right? Again, the sequence of the breath is encoding the triangle, the trinity, as well as the circle and the square, right? Just like how the words mouth and nose are squaring the circle, right? Because, like I've mentioned, the nose operates the Ida and the Pingala, which are the two halves of your consciousness. That's your mind. The nose is above your mouth, just like how the brain is above the body, right? And your mouth is your sushumna, right? So, yeah, there's that. And another interesting thing with Revelation 21:17, right? And he measured the wall thereof 144 cubits according to the measure of a man, that is of the angel, right? Going back to that, this, excuse me. There are 25 words and 100 letters. You want to know what's interesting about that? Is if we add these together, right, it sums 125, which is not only 5 cubed, right, so it's a cube of 5, but it's also the number of steps or degrees that we take from our mortal existence all the way to Ein Sof and Kabbalah, right? There are 125 steps. And so what would be, so from 1 all the way up, essentially you're returning to the center, right? You're returning to infinity. That's what the whole, tradition of the 125 degrees of Kabbalah is all about, right? Well, what would be the step after that, after this, right? If there are 125 individual steps, is the 125th the final step, or is the 126th? Going back to the doubling of the cube, which is what Kabbalah is all about. Kabbalah is all about doubling the cube, right? And the 2 cubes, right? Because again, if you have 1 cube, right? I'm just going to draw a cube like this, right? If you have 1 cube, right? And say it's a cube of 1, right? And you want to double the volume of this cube, you got to use 1.26, right? 1.26. Well, it not only doubles the volume of this cube, right? But if you were to double this cube and make it twice as big, right? You could also just like duplicate it, because 2 cubes of this same size would be the same volume as if this cube was twice its size, right? So technically 1.26, doubling the volume of this cube, is not only just doubling the size of this one, but also just creating another one of itself. Again, because there's 2 cubes here, right? Going back to the fact that if you multiply the letters of Jesus, you get 4,320, which is the total degrees of 2 cubes, right? 2,160 times 2, right? Today thou shalt verily be with me, and verily I say unto thee, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. Remember all that Kabbalah, right? But again, this is all going back to, if we go by the scripture in Revelation, right? The city of God is like unto pure gold, as clear as crystal, right? This is a clear cube, right? And as I've showed you before, if you look at the, see if I have this picture real quick. Actually, I'll look it up on Google. It's essentially a cyan, magenta, yellow, I think is what it is. CMY cube, I think is what they're called. Here, I'll show you. This is a perfect example, right? So if you look up, just look up a picture of this, not that one. Dang it. So if you look at, this is a translucent cube, right? And if you look at the corner of a translucent cube, what do you see? You see another cube inside of it, right? So it is, again, the city of God is like unto pure gold, as clear as crystal. Why? Because this corner, right, which is 270 degrees, right? If you consider all 3 sides, you have 90, 90, 90 per vertex, right? So 270, I'll probably get into that a little bit later on. But 270 being the period of gestation and birth, the average period of gestation for birth, right? It is 3/4 of a circle, right? Among many other things. But you see this smaller cube inside the cube, right? Because like John of Patmos says, right? The cube is as clear as crystal, right? And then you have the city of God, which is the big cube, and then you have the little cube in the center, which is the temple, and that's the Lord God and the Lamb are the temple of it, right? Again, because if you have solidity to the cube, right, you have to make when you make the net of the cube, right, if you want solidity to that cube, right, you have to make these pyramids, right? You have to make these pyramids, right? And what's interesting is that if you made these pyramids and you closed it back up, the capstones would basically collapse into themselves, right? So they can't be exact capstones, right? Like you technically can't make these exact capstones because the capstones would all hit each other. When you fold the cube back up, the capstones would just hit each other, right? So either the capstone, right? What is the capstone usually representing? It represents the eye of God, right? The eye of providence, right? It is the no thing, right? If you look at the dollar bill, which I don't have with me, but if you look at the dollar bill and you look at that pyramid, what you see is that on the side at the bottom, like where the capstone is floating, right? It's been removed. At least I'm pretty certain. I can't remember. Let me look up a dollar bill real quick. Just because it's been a minute. Oh, and if you haven't heard the song called Dollar Bill by Screaming Trees, I highly suggest you check it out. It's a great song. Yeah, the capstone is floating. Why? Because it's showing the removal of the capstone. But if you look on the pyramid, right, on the dollar bill, right, there's the side down here is shaded, but when you get up to the capstone, there is no shading on the side. Why? Because this is showing you 3 dimensions, and then it goes up to 2 dimensions with the triangle, and then you have the eye. It's going to 1 dimension, and the eye represents 0. So it's returning to the center. That's where all the capstones are pointing on the net of the cube. It's all pointing to the center. Again, that's why in Hebrews 4, they reference the Sabbath as not only the 7th day where when God rested, but Paul also references it as a place. Entering into God's place, he God's rest, he references it as a location, as not only a point in time, but also a location. Why? Because the cube is the 6 all around 7. It's all resting on that 7th point, that Sabbath. So I'm kind of jumping around here, but I kind of want to bring it back to what I was talking about before. So, here, let me find the right thing to get into. Okay, so, here, give me 1 second. Okay, just as like an interesting thing here. So, all this references about squaring the circle and how mouth and nose comes back to the axiomatic triangle, how it's encoding 7 and 6, and this and that, how mouth sums 22, that also sums the word 7, nose sums 14, that also sums the word 6, 7 and 6, right? And if we look at the gematria for 14 and 22, they're giving us 76, right? Well, in the law of time, for instance, let's actually hang on 1 second. If we add the digits, okay, so nose, right, is 14, and mouth is 22. If we add all the digits from 14 to 22, right? Give me just 1 moment. If we add all the digits from 14 to 22, right? This sums 162, all right? 162. Now, what's interesting about this number 162 is that 162, right? So we're going back to the Zolkin here. We're looking at kin 162. What's interesting about kin 162 is, so we add the digits 14 to 22 for nose to mouth, right? Kin 162 is, so I'm going to put this here, is white, rhythmic, wind. White, rhythmic, wind. White sums 27, rhythmic sums 35, and wind sums 14. If we add 27 plus 35 plus 14, it's 76. Even encoded, so what we did was we basically triangulated the digits from 14 all the way to 22. So 14 plus 15 plus 16 plus 17 plus 18 plus 19 plus 20 plus 21 plus 22. It gave us the number 162. Then we referenced the Zolkin and said, okay, well, what is kin 162? Well, it's white rhythmic wind. And then we look at the gematria for white rhythmic wind, boom, 76. There it is again. So this is basically correlating the G-breath, gematria, the Bible, and the law of time. all unified into a singular science, all syncretized into a universal field of knowledge that's all connected and synchronized with each other. Now, if we just look at okay, so 14 is for nose, right? And then for mouth, it's 22, right? So we're just going to look at the digits between 14 and 22, right? So that would be 15 to 21, right? If we add 15 to 21, it sums 126. Again, going back to the doubling of the cube, right? Because all this has to do with Kabbalah as well. Your breath is connected to your chakras, which your chakras are made up of 12 around 1, which is your two cubes. Right? I was about to say two dubes, but yeah. Again, another reference to doubling the cube. And 162 and 126 are essentially anagrams of each other. They're numerical anagrams, right? And what's interesting is going back to 172, right? Hang on one second. No, not that. Let me find where I was for a moment. Yeah, going back to mouth, and nose. Remember when I was talking about that? So nose would be the least one, so that sums 28, right? And then mouth is 44. If we add 28 through 44, it sums 612. Again, another numerical anagram here of this 6 and this 2 and this 1. All right. Again, all of these numbers, 1, 2, and 6, going back to the doubling of the cube, right? The another permutation of this is 216, and that being a cube of 6, or all the angles of the cube, right? Again, another permutation, right? Give me just one moment. I need to do something real quick. Okay, so I'm gonna reference something here real quick. Kind of going back to the basics right now. Or no, hang on, give me just one moment. So when we look at the act of breathing, right? What ultimately is this entire act of breath, right? It would be in and out. Right? In and out. In is 5 and 1, so this gives us 6, right? And again, remember what I referenced with the word in? It's the very first word in the entire Holy Bible, right? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, right? Inwards, in the beginning, right? In. Why? Because all of this is internal, right? All of this is an internal process that's going outwards, and then as the outward process comes back in. So the in goes out and the out goes in, right? Out is 2, 6, 7, which sums 15. So in sums 6, out sums 15, right? This will be the last thing that I talk about in this part. So now that I have that established, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Well, 6 plus 15 is 21, right? Going back to this number here. So 6 and 15 together, right? 6 and 15 together give us 21, right? For in and out. And hang on, give me just one moment. All of this is based upon the 6 aspects of the cube, right? All of this is cubic geometry, which is directly encoded within our breath, right? Well, if we look at the geometry of the cube, the actual directions of that the cube is pointing to would be the XYZ axis, right? It's the XYZ axis, right? X is going horizontal left to right, Y is going vertical up and down, and Z is going in and out, right? It has to do with breadth, right? So you have length, height, and breadth, right? Again, breadth is in and out. That's the Z axis, right? Now, what's interesting is that if we look at the gematria of this, so X is 3, Y is 2, Z is 1, 3, 2, 1, which is a mirror of 1, 2, 3, right? So ABC would be 1, 2, 3, and XYZ is 3, 2, 1, right? And axis is 1, 3, 5, 6. Well, 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 6. And 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 6 is 15. Again, giving you the same exact numerical pattern for in, out, XYZ axis, right? Now, one thing that I don't think I've talked about all that much, but it's basically the 90-degree angle, right? So here's the 90-degree angle, and because we have 6 colors of the rainbow, each color governs 15 degrees. So 6 colors, each of 15 degrees. If we multiply 6 times 15, we get 90, obviously, right? So another reference to 6 and 15 goes back to all of this, which the vertical line, like I said, is the y-axis, right? That has to do with, the y-axis has to do with the mind. The x-axis has to do with, the body. And the diagonal, or the one that's going straight in and out, has to do with the z-axis, right? Because it's the central line here that basically gives us our vibrational waves, right? Because when the energy is just going straight up, it's just going straight up, and when it's going straight horizontal, it's flatlined, right? So it's anywhere here in the middle that can create a wave. So for instance, if you're vibrating at an alpha frequency, it's going to go up to this angle, and then it's going to come back down at the same angle, and it's going to create a specific frequency, a specific sine wave. Whereas when it's coming all the way up here, it's going to be making a more up and down sort of energy. But when it's coming down here, it's going to be like more horizontal, right? So I just wanted to point out the 90-degree angle there and how each of the 6 breaths fit within that. So for instance, going back to in and out, if we, in sums 6, out sums 15, there's 6 colors, each of 15 degrees, 6 times 15, that's 90, right? But if we look at, for instance, x is 3 times y, which is 2, times z, which is 1, times axis, which is 15. So 3 times 2 times 1 times 15 is 90. Again, x, y, z. Multiply x times y times z times axis. Or if we add these up together and we just do x, y, z times axis, again, it's 6 times 15, right? Because that's the nature of, it's a property of 6. 1, because it's a perfect number, so its divisors will sum itself. But I believe 6 is the only number who has this property of 3 consecutive digits, where 1 times 2 times 3 is 6, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. So 6, it has this very unique property, right? And again, it has these properties because it's related to the rainbow, right? So if we look at the consonants of XYZ axis, right? So the consonants would be X, Y, Z, X, S, right? If the vowels are just A and I for axis, right? If A and I together give us 6, then the consonants give us 15. Again, another way that it's being encoded with this 6 and this 15, the 6 colors of 15 degrees each, right? So even in the consonants and the vowels of XYZ axis, right? Give me just a moment. And just like how I mentioned 2 and 1, for instance, right? 2 being 13, 1 being 8, right? If we look at the consonants and vowels for in and out, right? The vowels are I, O, and U, right? And then the consonants, would be N and T. Well, N and T give us 8, and I, O, U give us 13. 2 and 1, I, O, U, N, T, right? So I guess just a few more things here. Give me just a moment. So sorry, I'm looking through my notes right now. So yeah, I guess this will be the last few things that I discuss right now. So going back to the rainbow, right? As I mentioned before in the previous video, right? If we looked at all the digits, right, for the colors, right? So we have 14, 15, 17, 21, 23, and 24. Add these up together, it sums 114, right? Well, there are 6 colors here, right? And what would this integer be? Well, it would be the digit between 17 and 21, right? And that would be 19. And there are 6, right? So 19 times 6 is 114, right? So there's this connection between 19 and 6 and 114, right? So give me just a moment. And the degrees of the rainbow, right? So 40, 41, and 42, all right? These would be the 3 sections of the rainbow. So the bottom 2 colors would be 40 degrees. Red and orange is 40 degrees. Yellow and green is 41. And blue and purple are 42 degrees. And this is the top of the rainbow, right? So if we add these together, right, it sums 123. Again, giving us our, ABC 1, 2, 3 type of thing, going back to the divisors of 6 and how, you multiply them or add them, they sum 6, right? It's the first perfect number, right? So we have this number 114 and 123. So what's interesting here is that, and Marty Leeds has pointed this out, right? Where we establish pi on the number line is 13, 14, and 15, right? So that's where we establish pi. Why? Because 13 would be the end of a vibrational field. All vibrational fields are from 1 to 13, right? You make the diameter of the circle 1, and then you get 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, pi. It's established right there in the number line. The words holy in Gematria sum 12, and Bible sum 16, right? 12 and 16. The 3 digits between holy and Bible, boom, pi, right? And what is pi? But a circle circumference with that diameter dividing it down the middle, right? If we add 13 plus 14 plus 15, right, it sums 42, right? 42 degrees of the rainbow, which, the rainbow is making pi with the earth, mind you, and the 42 generations of Christ, right, from Adam to Christ. So from Adam to David is 14 generations. David to Babylon is 14, and then from Babylon to Christ are 14. 3 separate sections of 14 generations. 3 14s, 3 14s, right? Again, giving us 42. 14 plus 14 plus 14 is 42. But all of this is embedded within our creation. This is not something man has made up. Although man has understood these numbers that God has created and embedded them in teachings in order to share this knowledge with other people, all of this is embedded within the rainbow itself. All of this is embedded within pi. All of this is embedded in our natural world that God has created. It's embedded within our body. All we're doing is writing it down. We're not creating anything. We're just remixing what already is, right? So if we reverse these numbers, so 13, 14, and 15, right, we get 31, 41, and 51, all right? So all we're doing is just reversing the numbers, right? 31 plus 41 plus 51 is 123. Again, another reference to the rainbow, right? You look at all three numbers that give you 42, reverse them, add them up, and you get 123, which is the separate degrees of 40 degrees plus 41 plus 42 for the rainbow. Boom, you get 123. Again, because the rainbow is making pi. The rainbow is making pi. It's dividing the circle. So you have the circle being cut up into two pieces, and then those two being made up into triplets, and then the triplets being made into six. And those six are it's the refraction of light. The rainbow is basically the six pieces of light. It's the six parts, right? And this is all encoded within our world. Every ancient culture basically broke this down and tried to put it into their stories and their mythologies and stuff to show us what they were talking about, right? And another interesting thing, right, is, okay, so remember, like I said, the six colors, right, they all sum 114, right? Well, if we look at the gematria for 13, right, the word 13, it sums 41, 14 sums 37, and 15 sums 35. Well, if we add 41 plus 37 plus 35, it sums 113. Well, why is this important? Well, first off, 113 is the 30th prime, right? Jesus Christ began his ministry about the age of 30, right? So it could have been 29, but as we know, 30 and 29 are going back to the centiger system of 59, which 30 is the center and two 29s on each side. So 29 and 30 is referencing 59, which is the gematria sum for the name of Jesus Christ. There are 59 beads in a traditional Christian rosary. Again, 59 is the sexagesimal system, which we use to clock time. It's a solar cycle. It's a solar number. But 113 is a prime number. So we look at the divisors of 113, which is 1 in itself. You add these up, it's 114. Right? 114. 113 and its divisors added up, you get 114. If we add 113 plus 114, we get 227, which is not only the 49th prime, right? It's the 49th. Why? Because whenever we make this mirror here of 1 to 7 and 7 back to 1, this is actually a process of squaring numbers. This is actually a way that you can square numbers. So if you want to square 3, right, you go 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. This sums 9. And what is 9 but the squaring of 3, right? So if you add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5, plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, you get 49, right? 49, 49th prime being 227, encoded within the prime 113 because its divisors will basically sum into the number next to it, which is 114. You add 113 and 114, you get 227. 227 being the 49th prime, which is the adding of all of these, which is a process of squaring numbers, right? And what is 7 doing but making pi within this? And what does the word 7 equal? Right? What does the word 7 equal? 22. And when you divide 22 by 7, you get pi. Again, all of this is encoded. All of this is encoded within our natural world. And the whole purpose of the biblical writers was to show us this, was to carry on this tradition, was to embed it within our very structure, right? Of our holy book, among many other things, right? So, and the last thing I'll mention is this, for now at least. Going back to the very central chapter being Psalms 118, right? Psalms 118, because you have 594 chapters before Psalms 118, and then you have 594 chapters after Psalms 118. Because there are 1,189 altogether, right? 1,189 altogether, making Psalms 118 the very central chapter in the whole Bible, giving us this mirror, right? Because it's mirrored on both sides, right? You got 594 over here and 594 over here, right? So, and also, the very smallest and shortest chapter in the whole Bible is Psalms 117, and the very longest and biggest chapter is Psalms 119. Don't believe me? All this can be verified. Go and look it up yourself. Right? So, this number 118 is the number of known elements on the periodic table. This is the number of times that they mention the word angel in the Old Testament. 117 times for basically the number of times they mention the word angel or angels or any other, alteration of the base word angel, the root word, but it's also one time in the middle of the word strangely, right? So if you look at the word strangely, right, there it is, angel. So it's a part of another word. So 117 times plus this one, boom, 118. All known elements. Why? Because angels can change their form into anything, right? They are not limited by space or time, and it's mentioned 180 times in the New Testament, 183 to be exact, but those 3 are when it's in the middle of the word evangelist, right? Going back to the number of times they mention angel or angels plural is 178. Then there's the 2 mentionings of archangel, which gives you 180. But then there's the 3 mentionings of the word evangelist, which gives you 183. And the first day of the year would be the first day. The last is 365. And what is that central day? 183. Again, going back to the Trinity of our solar annual cycle. A lot of these solar numbers are encoded within Jesus Christ. So much of the Bible is pointing you to the fact that Jesus is embedded in the Son. Like, that's what the biblical writers are basically trying to get your attention to, right? This is the number of times the word angel shows up in the New Testament. Or if you consider without the word evangelist, it's 180. So 118 for all known elements and 180 for all of space, right? Because it is the measurement of the first angle, which is not limited by space, right? And then you have 183, which is like basically the center of the solar year, right? All space, all time, all matter, right? Angels, right? Because angels are angles. They're properties of geometry. That's why they have these powers. Like, that's how they're able to do what they do. But going back to this 118. So again, if we look at the sum for the reversal of, so 13, 14, 15 gives us our rainbow, it gives us pi, it gives us the 42 generations, it gives us all kind of stuff, right? But again, we reverse it, right? So 13 reversed is 31, 41 reversed is, 14 reversed is 41, and 15 reversed is 51. These add up to 123, like I mentioned before, right? Again, a rainbow number, right? And if we look at the gematria sums for their words, so 31, right, is, so we're just going to, below here, we're going to add the gematria sum. So 31 is 40. 41 is 30. And 51 is 34. All right, so if we add these up together, they sum 104, right? So all that we're going to do is we're just going to take the value of 31 plus 41 plus 51, which is 123, and then the gematria values, which add up to 104, and just divide the bigger number by the smaller number, right? So 123 divided by 104, so the value of the numbers divided by the gematria values, right? And we get 1.182, etc., etc., etc. All right, there's your 118 again. Why? Because all of this is mirrored, right? It's mirroring, it's reversing, right? Because 13, 14, 15, 51, 41, 31. It's just a mirroring. That's all that it is, right? That's all that it is. And Jesus Christ, and this is what I'll do to end it on, I guess, because I've been tired all night, but my spirit is quickening, so that's why I'm actually able to finish this video. But it's already gone on for an hour and a half, so I'm going to end it for tonight and just work on my work until I come back with something more cohesive. But I think I'm getting close to the thing that God has been preparing me for. But Jesus is 4, 5, 6, 6, 6, which sums to 27, right? And Christ is 3, 6, 5, 5, 6, 7. This sums 32, right? Well, together they sum 59, right? And if we double Jesus Christ, right? Because within Jesus Christ is encoded the alchemical marriage. Alchemical marriage sums 59. Alchemical wedding sums 59, right? So, and within 59 is the sexagesimal system. Also 1 to 60, as well as being 0 to 59. 60 is the sum of solar seal lunar tone. And if we pluralize them, solar seals lunar tones, we get 72, which is the sum of Lord Jesus Christ, right? So Jesus Christ is all of these dualities unified. He is the preserver, right? He takes the power of the Father, the Creator, and the power of the Mother, the Holy Ghost, and he's unifying. He is that second part of the Trinity, right? He is the grand unifier. Through him, all things exist, right? And so if we double him for male and female, right, the two aspects, the two halves, 59 times 2, 118. That's exactly why Psalms, right, 118 is being mirrored there, right? Give me just a moment. I'm going to probably mention one last thing. So just like I said before, 6 with that center digit being 19, right? 6 colors and the center digit being 19. 6 times 19 is 114, right? Well, get this. So Psalms, right? Psalms. What this is encoding, 3, 6, 1, 2, 1, 6, right? 3 plus 6 is 9, plus 1 is 10, plus 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13, plus 6 is 19. Right? There, 6 letters. Right? 6 and 19. Well, where's the 6 in Psalms? It's these S's, right? Because remember, Psalms is mirroring the Bible. And how are we mirrored? How did God mirror us? But our palms, right? And remember how I was mentioning this would be Yggdrasil, 0 to 9, but 0 to what is it? The Kabbalah of 12 is including our palms, right? Because this is the sign language for Jesus, pointing to the palms, right? Where he was nailed to the cross, right? Nailed to the Kabbalah. Nailed to the tree, if you will, as they say in Acts. Acts, and talking about trees. But yeah, it's nothing more than palms, right? Palms, which sums 13, right? There's your Kabbalah, because you have 12 around 1, right? And it's all, with that additional S, it's 6. The 13th prime is, the 6th prime is 13, right? And if we include the bones of our palm, right, we have 14 phalanges, right? And then if we include the bones of our palm, there are 5 metacarpals. So 14 plus 5 is 19. Psalms. Palms, right? And the S is the 19th letter. And like the ordinal, just looking at the 19th letter of the alphabet, it's S. All right. And what is it? The S is that yin yang. It's that mirror, right? That's the S, right? It's the mirror. That's why we bring our hands together in prayer. That's why we do that, because we're unifying the opposites, right? And there was one other thing that I wanted to mention. I'm trying to remember what it was. But yeah, the Psalms is a reference to our palms, right? Our hands, right? They are the songs of our hands, the music of creation. Why? Because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Who created our hands and heaven? God. And how is he doing that? It's an eternal song, right? And so Psalms 118 is creating that mirror, right? Just like how when you look at the two sides of that, it's 259s, two Jesus Christs. Why? Because holy means whole. It means oneness. It means unit, like unity. Whereas by means two, right? And bel, like, means beauty. Holy Bible. So the Holy Bible is the wholeness of the two beauties, which is male and female. Eternal creation, just like how pi goes on and on and on and on forever and ever and ever, because it's creating this endless stream of musical notes, which are numbers. Each musical note of the chromatic scale goes back to chroma. So that's all I'll say for now. But I think I deserve a rest now, just because I've been going through some crazy stuff, by the way. But yeah, I just need time to rest and everything like that. But I will catch y'all in the next one. So keep G breathing, your G's, and draw in that inner G, right? That chi, right? And just like in the Tao, right? The Tao teaching in Tao 19, return to the center of the circle. Y'all take it easy.